Welcome to Dr. Chem's lab. I am seriously thrilled to have you here for today's explainer because we're going to dive into a truly immersive laboratory experiment on determining buffer capacity. We're going to put on our virtual lab coats and walk through the exact step-by-step process required to test and measure a buffer's limits. This experiment, it's an absolute cornerstone in analytical chemistry, biochemistry, pharmaceutical sciences, environmental analysis, the whole shebang. In all of these fields, maintaining a stable pH isn't just some nice-to-have bonus, it is absolutely essential. We've got some fantastic source material to draw from today, so let's get those safety goggles on and get to work. Here's our lab manual for today. We'll start with 1, the principle of buffers. Then 2, apparatus and laboratory safety. 3, pH meter calibration. 4, the titration procedure. 5, calculating buffer capacity. And finally, 6, real-world applications. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the principle of buffers, chemical theory. So to start us off, what exactly is a buffer? Well, you can kind of think of a buffer solution as a chemical shield, usually made up of a weak acid and its conjugate base, or a weak base and its conjugate acid. It actively works to neutralize added hydrogen ions or hydroxide ions, and that neutralizes or minimizes changes in pH. So when we talk about buffer capacity, we're literally talking about the magnitude of that resistance. Basically, how strong is that shield when we attack it with small amounts of a strong acid or base? To actually quantify that shield, we look at the math using Van Slyke's approximate formula for buffer capacity, which is denoted by the Greek letter beta. As you can see, the formula is delta B over delta pH. Delta B is the small increment of strong base or acid added to the buffer solution, expressed in gram equivalents per liter. Delta pH is the resulting change in pH. So, putting that all together, a solution has a buffer capacity of 1 when adding exactly 1 gram equivalent of strong base or acid to 1 liter of the buffer causes the pH to change by exactly 1 unit. Moving on to Section 2, apparatus and laboratory safety, because good science requires the right tools. Here is the precise equipment and the chemicals we're going to need to test our buffer. We need a calibrated pH meter, a burette and pipettes, beakers, a volumetric flask, and a standard buffer solution. We're also going to need 0.1 molar hydrochloric acid and 0.1 molar sodium hydroxide to act as our strong acid and base titrants. And I really want to highlight the necessity of the magnetic stirrer here. Continuous mixing is absolutely vital so that the added acid or base is instantly and evenly distributed throughout our buffer. And of course, before we touch a single beaker, we need to talk about safety. Strong acids like hydrochloric acid and strong bases like sodium hydroxide are highly corrosive and dangerous. You must always wear your laboratory coat, gloves, and safety goggles while handling these chemicals. Never, ever cut corners on safety protocols in the lab. Section 3, pH meter calibration, instrument setup. Accurate data relies entirely on meticulous prep. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the glass electrode setup on our auto-digital pH meter. Using an electrometric method like this is a massive advantage because the glass electrode isn't affected by oxidation reduction systems, and it establishes equilibrium incredibly fast. It gives us a highly accurate measurement that we simply can't get from standard colorimetric indicator strips. To ensure our readings are spot on, we followed these exact calibration steps. First, we set the instrument temperature to match our solution. Second, we immerse the electrode in a neutral pH 7.0 standard buffer and adjust the machine. Third, we calibrate with an acidic pH 4.0 standard buffer. And finally, step 4, and this is a crucial habit to form, we meticulously rinse the electrode with distilled water. We have to do this between every single measurement to completely avoid cross-contamination. All right, time for the wet lab action. Section 4, the titration procedure, testing the limits. Here is our step-by-step titration procedure based on standard college-level wet lab practices. First, we accurately measure 50 milliliters of our buffer into a beaker. Second, we drop in our magnetic stir bar and get it continuously stirring. Third, from our burette, we carefully and gradually add our 0.1 molar HCl titrant in precise 5.00 milliliter increments. Finally, after each addition, we wait for the reaction to occur, and we record the pH only after the digital reading has completely stabilized. We just repeat this over and over, pushing the buffer until its shield finally breaks. Section 5, calculating buffer capacity. Let's look at the data. To actually see what happens to a buffer under stress, we use Van Slyke's classic titration curve, mapping moles of strong base against pH. And this brilliantly illustrates how the curve visually represents the buffer region. Notice how in the middle, the curve is super steep relative to the y-axis. That means you're adding a lot of base, but the pH on the x-axis is barely budging. But as you continue to add titrant, the ratio of the buffer components changes, the buffer gets depleted, and suddenly, bam, the pH starts shifting rapidly. Let's break down what these results actually mean. A higher buffer capacity is indicated by only a tiny change in pH when your titrant is added. This high efficiency relies heavily on a high total concentration of the buffer's components, the salt and the acid. On the flip side, a lower buffer capacity shows a large pH change, signaling that the alkaline or acid reserve of the buffer has been completely depleted by the titrant. So the real trick is knowing when a buffer is at its absolute strongest. This slide highlights a golden mathematical rule of chemistry. The maximum buffer capacity occurs where the pH equals the pKa of the weak acid. At this exact, precise point, the ratio of salt to acid in the solution is exactly 1:1. This is where your chemical shield is at its absolute thickest. Section 6, Real-World Applications, taking this beyond the lab. I want to pose this question directly to you. Why does this matter outside the lab? Why is maintaining a perfectly stable pH quite literally a matter of life and death? I mean, it's definitely not just an academic exercise. The real-world applications of buffer capacity are incredibly diverse and, honestly, profoundly impactful. In pharmaceutical sciences, precise pH control prevents excruciating tissue irritation when you're administering eye drops or applying medicine. It stops hemolysis, the rupturing of red blood cells when formulating intravenous drugs. Inside biochemistry, it optimizes biological activity because enzymes only work properly at very specific pH values. It ensures that pharmaceutical formulations stay soluble on the shelf. It's heavily relied upon in the food and beverage industries inside quality control labs, and it's even used in environmental analysis to monitor the buffer capacity of soils to keep our agriculture healthy. But let's look at perhaps the most fascinating application of all. You. Your own human blood is the ultimate buffer system. It is a highly complex medium filled with hidden buffers. Our source data reveals that hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen, actually accounts for roughly 65% of your blood's buffer capacity. It relies on the exact same chemical principles we just measured in the lab to neutralize acids. Because of this massive buffer capacity, your blood can safely transport over 15 moles of acidic CO2 from your tissues to your lungs every single day, all while keeping your blood pH completely stable. No way, right? It's incredible. That brings us to the end of our explainer, but I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If our own bodies are perfectly calibrated buffer systems operating at a precise equilibrium, what happens when disease, environmental pressures, or medical emergencies push those systems completely beyond their maximum capacity? The tools and procedures we learned today in Dr. Kem's lab are exactly how scientists and doctors answer that question and find solutions to restore that vital balance. Thanks so much for joining me in the lab today, and keep exploring.